find these parts and name them, because if you do it randomly, you're gonna miss a lot of stuff, right? So find a system. Mine is, I work my way from the top left to the bottom right, and then I follow hoses as well. So keep that in mind. Find a system that works for you. And this doesn't necessarily have to be my system. Just find out when it works for you and stick to it. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about the clearance lights up top, which you can't really see because of the snow. But the clearance lights, huh?
But they are up there?
Yeah, they're up. You can see them a little bit. You can see the shadow. Look at the old bastard, come on. They're properly mounted, secured, they're not cracked, bent, or broken. They're clean and the proper color of amber. All right. And then we're gonna talk about our hood mirrors. They're properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. There's no chips, and they're free of any kind of illegal stickers or obstructions. And then you got your headlight assembly, both of them. They're properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. They're clean and the proper color of clear for the high beams and the low beams, and amber for the turn signals and the four-way flashers and the marker lights, whatever you call them. All right. And then you're going to look underneath, make sure there's no puddles, which would indicate a leak. And also, look for hanging or exposed wires, right, or metal. And then you're going to look at the overall silhouette of the truck. Make sure it's not leaning to the left or the right. If it is, usually it means a flat tire, something's wrong with the suspension, or you got a shifted load in the back. All right, let's open up this hood. One of y'all get the other side, and one of y'all get the deer guard. Did you get it?
Yeah, you do.
All right, I start on the passenger side. All right, so the passenger side, we're gonna talk about all these hoses around here. All right, all these hoses are properly mounted, secured at both ends. There's no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or dry rot, and none of them are cracked, bent, or broken. All right, and none of them are leaking. And right here, we have our belt-driven alternator, right there. Belt-driven alternator is properly mounted, secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. The wires are also properly mounted, secured. They're not worn, torn, frayed, cut, or dry rotted, and none of them are spliced, frayed, or exposed. It's belt-driven, so you got to talk about the belt, how it's properly mounted, secured. It's not worn, torn, frayed, cut, or dry rotted. And when you pull on it, it should have no more than a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inches of free play. All right.
Question.
Going on over to the other. Huh?
Question.
What's up?
So we got AC right there too. I know that's not a crucial part.
Yeah.
But if it is bent or anything like that, we're gonna have belt issues, right? Is that something we need to be checking out or not?
I mean, according to the DOT, your comfort doesn't matter.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
When it comes to the company, your comfort doesn't matter with that AC. But yes, it could cause a problem with that. So yeah, you just keep an eye.
Glance over it. Yeah.
Keep an eye on it.
I got you.
If it don't work, then obviously the company's going to try to fix it for you. But when it comes for a DOT inspection, you can still roll. Go. All right. So next thing we're talking about is this coolant reservoir right here. Coolant reservoir is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's not leaking. The cap is on tight, and it's filled to the manufacturer's specifications. Following the hose at the bottom, eventually it reaches the water pump back here. Your belt-driven water pump is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it's not leaking. It's belt-driven, so you got to talk about the belt, how it's properly mounted and secured, not worn, torn, frayed, cut, or dry rotted. And when you pull on it, it has no more than a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inches of free play. Next up is our oil cap and our dipstick. They are properly mounted and secured. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and the oil is filled to the manufacturer's specifications. Next up, we have our power steering fluid reservoir. It is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's not leaking. The cap is on tight, and it's filled to the manufacturer's specifications. Following the hose at the bottom, all the way down here behind the frame where you can't really see it, is your gear-driven power steering pump. It is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it's not leaking.
Kind of behind the frame.
Yeah, it's behind the frame. Yeah, it's a pain.
Pain in the ass.
All right, right next to it, again behind the frame, where you can't see it, is your gear-driven air compressor. It is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it's not leaking. All right, back to the reservoir. Following this hose down, we come to our steering linkage. All right, there's 5 parts. Steering column, gearbox, Pitman arm, drag link.
Drag link.
Then back here is your
Tie
tie rod.
Gotcha.
All right. All that stuff is properly mounted, secured. It's not cracked or broken. The gearbox is not leaking, and your 3 castle nuts and cotter pins, which are one here, and one back here on the tie rod behind the tire where you can't really see it. They're all present and accounted for. Next up, we have our shock absorber, which is right there. Our shock absorber is properly mounted, secured at both ends. It's not cracked and broken, and it's not leaking. All right. Right here, it's what's called your spring hanger or spring mount. The spring hanger, there's one. Well, there's 2 pieces of this one right here. There's one there. There's one all the way back here. All right. Spring hangers are properly mounted, secured. They're not cracked, and broken. They're not missing any hardware. All right. Connected to it are your leaf springs. Your leaf springs are properly mounted, secured at both ends. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and none of them are shifted or missing. All right. What connects your leaf springs to the axle are your U-bolts. You got 2 of them, 1 and 2. Your U-bolts are properly mounted, secured. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and there's no missing hardware, which is a nut underneath. All right. Next is our brake line, which is right here. Our brake line is properly mounted, secured at both ends. It's not worn, torn, frayed, cut, or dry rot. No, it's abrasions, bulges, cuts, or dry rot, and it's not leaking. Right here is what's called your brake chamber. Your brake chamber is properly mounted, secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it's not leaking. All right. Right here, in this little metal housing where the hump is, that's where your power screw is. So each one of you take a look at it. Right in there is where your power screw is. And take your time and look at it. Right in there, inside that little metal hump and that housing, I got the stick on, that's where your power screw is inside. And then your caliper you can see from the outside right here. I'll talk about these 2 parts together. The caliper and power screw, they're properly mounted, secured. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. And I guess technically it could leak, so it's not leaking. All right, and right here inside of your caliper, you have your pad, and then this disc-shaped thing around that your pads sit on is called your rotor. Pad and rotors. All right, that's why they're called disc brakes, because that's a big old silver disc. Pad and rotors are properly mounted, secured. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. There's no oil or debris between the pad and the rotor, and the pad has at least a 1/4 inch of friction material.
Taking them pretty much to disc brakes nowadays.
Except for the
I thought
trailers.
the
Most of our trailers are drums.
Drum brakes were safer. On the load.
Not anymore. Disc brakes are pretty damn reliable now.
Are they?
Oh yeah. I prefer disc brakes, to be honest.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Sweet. Okay.
Drums are on our trailers, but all of our trucks are disc.
Oh, okay.
They're disc. And besides, whenever you have a catastrophic failure on a disc brake,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to repair than if you have a catastrophic failure on a drum brake.
Well, that's weight too.
Yes, exactly.
Push run.
That's on drums.
Oh, I know. Oh, yeah. It's down there, but on the disc, you don't have to worry about it.
No,
Yeah.
no, you don't have to worry about it. All right, let's continue on with our tire. Our tire is properly mounted, secured. There's no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or dry rot on either sidewall or on the tread. Tread is worn evenly. This tread has at least 30 seconds of tread depth left. And this tire is filled to the manufacturer's specifications of 100 to 110 PSI, which you would check with a tire gauge at the valve stem right there. All right, next we have our rim. Our rim is properly mounted, secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and there's no illegal holes or welds. All right. Next we have our lug nuts. Lug nuts are properly mounted, secured. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. All 10 of them are there and not missing. There's no rust trails or powder residue, which would indicate that they're under tightened. And there's no cracks around the bolt holes, which would indicate they're over tightened. And who pew 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 just now? Pew pew pew. That's fucking funny. All right. So, depending on the composition of the rim is what you'll see. If it's an aluminum rim, that's where you see the powder residue, obviously, because aluminum doesn't rust. Steel is where you'll see those rust trails. Most of our rims are aluminum, so you'll see powder. All right, your hub seal is right here. Hub seal is properly mounted, secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's not missing any hardware. It's not leaking, and it's filled to the manufacturer specifications. And then last but not least, we have our marker light. Our marker light is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's clean, proper color of amber. Any questions about that engine compartment?
Just for the valve stem, do you have to mention too that it's properly mounted and secured? No?
No.
Just that.
Nope. I'm just gonna let them know that's where you put the air in.
Okay.